Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Kingdoms of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and tonight's armies are Ogres versus Kingdoms of Men. Tonight's scenario, a 2300 point battle of Push, and tonight's drink, a rather frothy gin and sour. Moving forward onto my opponent's Kingdoms of Men list, we open with a Horde of Spear Phalanx with the Indomitable Will and Pike's upgrade. Then we have two regiments of Foot Guard, both of whom have Indomitable Will and have exchanged their shields for +1 Crushing Strength, so they're down to Defense 4. And then one of whom has the Blade of Slashing, the other has the Mace of Crushing. Then we have two regiments of Militia Mob. We have two troops of Fanatics, a regiment of Bowmen, a regiment of Crossbows, a Horde of Knights with the J-Boots and Indomitable Will. We have two troops of Mounted Sergeants, we have a troop of Mounted Scouts, a Ballista, a General with the Blade of the Beast Slayer and Horse upgrades, two ASBs, a Fanatic Instigator, and two Wizards, both of whom have Banechant 2 and have replaced their Fireball 6 with Lightning Bolt 3. There are 20 points missing from this army. I'm not sure what they are, but I do know all of these units are accurate. Moving forward onto my Ogre Army, we open with two regiments of Warrior Chariots, then we have two hordes of Boomers, two regiments of Berserker Braves, two hordes of Siegebreakers, one of whom has the Chalice of Wrath, the other the Dwarven Ale, an Ogre Warlock with the Boomstick, so natively Lightning Bolt 3 is now 6, three ASBs, a Berserker Bully with the Blood of the Old King, and finally Nomagorok. So if you don't know, Nomagorok is like an Ogre Warlock, so it does get +1 per unit or per Ogre regiment or horde within 3 inches or within 6 inches of it, up to a bonus of +3N to all of its spells. Its spells are Banechant 3, Heal 4, and I believe Lightning Bolt 4. So yeah, a pretty decent piece. And then lastly, it has the rule Bloodlust. So if you are Warcraft fans, it's always fun for me. And that grants it vicious melee to any unit that it casts or that it successfully casts heal onto on its previous turn. So anyway, with that known, it's also regularly inspiring, not Inspire Berserker, but whatever. Let's move forward onto the scenario. So the scenario is Push, and I'm going to take a drink. Good stuff. So Push is a rather simple scenario. You roll up D3 loot counters before the game begins. Then you take it in turns, placing the loot counters in your deployment zone, which includes being able to place them on your own units. One loot counter is placed in the center of the table. And then the victory condition is you get 2 victory points per loot counter you have on a unit that is entirely on your opponent's side of the field, and 1 victory point otherwise per loot token. Loot tokens have some additional rules, which are they cannot be surged, wind blasted, and I think enthralled. I'm not exactly sure on the enthrall. You are down to speed 5, and then you lose fly and nimble. So you can't be pushed around, you're a little slower, and that's about it. But with that out of the way, let's go into the terrain and deployment. So first off, for the terrain, we have 2 height 9 forests as per usual. We have 2 height 1 pieces of difficult. Actually, we might have played these as height 0 or height flat. I'm not exactly sure, but it's not super relevant for this. But I'm gonna assume they're height 1 right here. And I will say this lovely lighting is courtesy of a local player who has opened their church to us to play very small games, right? With or not small games, but small groups of people that know each other. So we have 4 people that come down, and we get some better lighting. Is my point. So anyway, we have a height 3 hill in the center. We have 4 height 2 obstacles. And finally, 2 height 9 pieces of impassable. I actually think that we ran these both as height 9, yeah, because I put another piece on top of this, so I don't have to run it as height 5. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's go into deployment, starting with the Kingdoms of Men. So if we go back a picture, the Kingdoms of Men ended up on this side. I think my opponent won that roll-off and chose this side, and we're going to start on the left. So over here, we open with the Horde of Knights with the Indomitable Will and J-Boots. I love these models. These are the Song of Ice and Fire. Is it a board game or a miniature game or some blend between the two? But these are absolutely lovely from CMON. So anyway, then we have the General or the Mountain Who Rides with a horse and Blade of the Beast Slayer. To the right of that, we have a Militia Regiment, and in front of it, a Mounted Sergeant Troop. Off here to the right of that, we have our first Wizard with Lightning Bolt 3 and Banechant 2. Behind him, we have the first Militia Regiment. I have not marked this off, but this is the first regiment of foot guard with Indomitable Will and the Mace of Crushing on these guys. So Lannisters, I guess, had the mace. And then behind them is this ASB. In front of it is the Pike Horde with Indomitable Will and pikes, of course. And off here to the right of that, we have the 1st Fanatic Troop. We have the 2nd Foot Guard Regiment with Indomitable Will and Blade of Slashing. Behind it is the Fanatic Instigator. Then to the right of that, we have the Mounted Sergeant Troop, the 2nd Wizard, the 2nd ASB, and the Crossbow Regiment. And finally, off here to the right of that, so a very wide deployment here, we have the 2nd Fanatic Troop, the 2nd Militia Regiment, the 1st Mounted Scout Troop, or I guess the only Mounted Scout Troop, and the Siege Artillery, which I've marked down erroneously. That is a Ballista, not Siege Artillery. And facing off against the Ballista, maybe it's just named Siege Artillery. It's, you know, they've got a hero named Hero, might as well. We have the 1st Ogre Chariot Regiment, or Warrior Chariot Regiment, I should say. In front of it is the Berserker Bully with the Blood of the Old King. To the right of that, we have the 1st ASB and the 2nd Warrior Chariot Regiment. Off here to the right of that, we have both the Boomer Hordes with an ASB and a Warlock with the Boomstick right there. To the right of that, we have this very ghostly Siegebreaker Horde. I knew I was forgetting something when I drove down, but they have the Chalice of Wrath because they're so mad about me forgetting their models. Behind them is the 1st Berserker Brave Regiment. To the right of that, we have the 2nd ASB and Nomogorak. And then to the right of that, we have the 2nd Siegebreaker Horde with Dwarven Ale, and behind them, the 2nd Berserker Brave Regiment. And finally, we see the full deployment, or a decent shot of the full deployment. You can see the Ogres have sort of just forsaken this part of the table. My opponent's a lot wider than me, and every turn that I spend away from this Knight Horde, I'm pretty happy about that. Because I really think strongly that Knight Hordes are... I basically treat them as heavy infantry hordes that can just charge 16, which sounds like, of course that's what they are. But once you realize that they're just... just to treat them like an infantry horde, they become a lot less awkward to maneuver. That I know a lot of people think that these guys are really hard, but honestly, stuff like this has a J-Boots, and I don't like putting any of those, either the J-Boots or the Potion of the Caterpillar. I don't think they're mandatory. In fact, I don't even think they're the best upgrades for a Knight Horde. You should be going for Brew of Strength or Blessing of the Gods or some damage multiplier, because these are just a very fast infantry horde is the best way to keep that mental picture in your head. That way you're not trying to overextend. Anyway, I hid from those, so I deployed all the way over here. And we can see here, my opponent has put all 3 of their loot tokens onto the Pike Horde. It's generally a pretty good pick, but I do have a lot of boomers sitting up exactly opposite of it, so I'm not exactly sure about that one. Personally, I'd probably have put it on one of these backfield units, like the Militia, because besides my Lightning Bolt, I don't have the most shooting, or the most long-range shooting, I should say. And the Militia are surprisingly tough. Due to their slightly higher, they have I think a lower break value. I think they're an 11, but then they're a 14 to actually kill. So it's that +3 difference, right? And it doesn't matter if they're wavered unless it's the end of the game. You can always pick it up with another unit, so on and so forth. So I think my opponent might have behooved them to do that. I have actually, you can't see it, but the 1st ASB that's over here by the Warrior Chariots, I put all 3 of my loot tokens onto that. They're a little slower, they lose their nimble, but my opponent has very little shooting, or very light shooting, and really only the mounted scouts can see very well, and I have a lot of height 4 over there, so there's just no chance. So anyway, let's move into turn 1. So turn 1 ends up going to the Kingdoms of Men. They win the roll-off and decide to run forward. I did talk to my opponent a little bit about this. They wanted to not... This is another new player you might notice from the unpainted models. Although, I mean, I have just no models on this. But they are just trying out this army, which I absolutely love this. I would love to paint some of these. Maybe I'll pick some up. I do love those Game of Thrones models. Anyway, they're really nice. And they just finished getting them off there. They come on these little discs, I think. And they just finished... cutting them off those and getting them onto these trays so they can play this out. And they didn't want any help with the game besides, don't let them cheat. So I tried to hold back speaking, right? Let them make their mistakes. Because I tend to ask my opponents in games, do you want me to help you or not, right? And I mean, I play against people significantly better than me every once in a while, and of course I don't try to help them, or I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible. Sometimes it's, hoisted by my own moutard. So anyway, but on this one, I was like, well, do you really want to go first? Because I have all this short range shooting actually over here with the boomers, right? And so it's one of those chances where you're like, do you want me to take the center, right? Or do you want to take the center and get shot turn one? So it's always that question. I don't think either is particularly right or wrong. It's just being aware of those options that's important. So anyway, as you can see, the Kingdoms of Men take the center field. These Cav are holding back a little bit more than I think they should. I think that these guys, the J-Boots don't really help them too much. So maybe they did go as far forward as they could, which is fine. They should be going 8, right? Because they're out of position right now. They need to be getting aggressive, right? And especially because I'm playing Ogres, I don't have these big, like a Night Horde deletes pretty much anything it touches, but especially when you're a 15-17, it'll just go right through you. So anyway, with that said, let's go off to the right here. You can see, yeah, it's more of the same. They advance forward. I actually kind of like these little holding patterns, right? So they're doing a checkerboard, which is always nice to see. I don't know if we adjusted this later or not. No, I don't think we did. And then they also have just these very small, this is, I think, a bit of a mistake because they could have delivered more like this. So this ballista could see more targets, right? I have, actually, they can't see this. Probably. I'm not exactly sure, but it gives them more targets. They can see over these units, so they've got a decent line of sight there, but I think they don't want to block out this. But otherwise, it's really good because these units are height 4, so they've got the shot there if they want it. So anyway, I think it's fine. It's just a very small, minute adjustment there would have been nice. So the ballista had one more target, but my opponent might have measured it and might have had it. So anyway, let's go over here. We start with the crossbows. Look at those models. So nice. Firing into... Actually, I guess that's the only picture we took of it. A bunch of my units here take 1 or 2 points of damage. These boomers take 2. This unit takes 1. And I think this chariot unit in the woods takes 1 damage. No one's wavered. Obviously, no one's killed because it's not high enough. So that'll be the end of turn shot. And we'll move forward on to turn 1 for the Ogres. So turn 1 Ogres, I don't move too far forward because I am quite outdropped in this matchup. So I want to delete some of this chaff out before I try to go and engage because I can end up getting swarmed pretty easily, I think. So yeah, I advance forward as I can. I do have the speed advantage here because these units are a lot the men themselves are speed 5, and their cab units, which are over here, because again, I hid from these knights, are only going to be able to charge into units 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 into the front of this one. So like these boomers, these scouts are in the flank, but then the chariots advance forward to make that charge impossible. And these guys are in the front, right? And so on and so forth down the line. So that is how I deploy. I move forward with these siege breakers because these pikes decide when they move forward they couldn't quite get onto the hill maybe, but the point is that they can't see the siege breakers in the shadow of the hill here. So I'm completely protected against these guys, and then these guys are out of range to charge my boomers because both the boomers move forward to get within 12 inches of these pikemen because I'm going to try to just blow them off the table right now. They've got all the loot tokens. If I can kill them, it'll begin a pretty good peace trade for me. And over here on the left, yeah, I just stay out of range of the Night Horde. No one wants to get charged there. And then I say, come at me with the siege breakers and these mounted sergeants, I think those are. So they can charge me with the general and the mounted well, no, the general actually can't see. So the sergeants would have to charge, and then these guys. And again, this charge is... I thought I blocked this off with the ASB. Maybe I moved it later. But yeah, that's definitely a flank charge. Maybe they just can't see me because of the hill and then this unit. I hope. Otherwise, this is a mistake that I made, and my opponent probably should have capitalized on it. But anyway, let's move forward into the shooting. So I fire, I'm going to shoot everything into these pikes, right? So I have 36 shots from the boomers, right? So that is 18 hits, and then I wound on 3s, so 12 hits, or 12 wounds, and this is, of course, we're just going for mean math, we're not going for an actual average. So I would say between 10 and 14, using the Nick Williams special. I like that one, the +/-2, it's good, just as some napkin math. And then, of course, I have the Lightning Bolt. So this is Lightning Bolt 9, because I actually do have this unit is within 6 inches of the Warlock. I forgot to count it, though, because I was playing it by the old Ogre rules, which well, actually, the old one required you to be within Berserker, so I even played that wrong. But anyway, I ended up going and only counting the Hordes. So I fire off a Lightning Bolt 8, and then I believe that this has Lightning Bolt +3 because I'm within... No, only +2 here too. Yeah, so I fire off Lightning Bolt 6 and Lightning Bolt 8 instead of Lightning Bolt 9 and Lightning Bolt 7. But it ends up not being too important. But still, it is important. You should do your math right? But anyway, so this is Lightning Bolt 16, right? So that's on 8 hits on average, and then let's put it at 5, right, for the mean. So between 3 and 7, right? So we have between 13 and 21 wounds to this horde of pikes, and I'm like, well, that's probably good enough because it's a 7 to waver, and that'll be fine. So I take my best shot. I do pretty well with 16. That's within that variance, right? It's on the low end. It's not what I want, but it's still pretty good. And I do get a waver, but Indomitable Will is... oof, it's so good. This is the end of turn shot. Indomitable Will is one of those rules where I go, whenever people ask me what I think the top 3 armies are in the game, or like where do I put the power ranking, I always put Kingdoms of Men and Rorty as a subfaction. I count them as a whole, right? So they're just different types of lists of Kingdoms of Men, I guess I'm saying. I put them near the top because they are amazing. Kingdoms of Men can build any sort of list you want at least like a 6 to a 7 out of 10, which is where you want to be for a lot of units. And then they have some of the best units in... I don't know. I really like their Night Horde. I think the what is it? The War Wizard, or whatever the wizard is called on a Pegasus. That is the best chap in the game. Anyone that says it's Gargoyles is wrong. Maybe it's the Pegasus out of Force of Nature, but I like that Lightning Bolt 3 a bit more for 15 points. But anyway, they are fantastic, just amazingly efficient, right? And that's sort of the name of the game in this army. They're all very inspiring, they're very efficient, so good, right? And one of those reasons is, on top of having all those bonuses I just mentioned, they have the most broken rule in the game, which is Indomitable Will. Indomitable Will is a 10-point upgrade for any unit size. So, for example, with my Sacrificial Imps and my Abyssals, I would pay 15 points or 20 points for a Horde, but and then 10 points for a regiment, or maybe 15 points for a regiment, and then 10 points for a troop. Indomitable Will, 10 points period, unless it's on a hero, and then it's 5 points for some reason. And it is so good, because not only does it make you fearless for a turn, not only does it make you inspiring self for a turn, you can pop it while you are wavered to turn off that wavering. And with the way it is written, it says you are now steady, meaning that if I waver this Horde of Knights with my shooting, right? When you are wavered, you are disordered, right? You lose your Thunderous Charge. That is not what this upgrade says. Indomitable Will says you turn, instead of being wavered, you stop that and are now steady, meaning you still have your Thunderous Charge, period, end of story. That is way too powerful for 10 points. So anyway, with that tirade out of the way, I love Kingdoms of Men. For any of you Kingdoms of Men player, you keep running Indomitable Will because your army is rad and I want people to recognize it. So that's going to be the end of turn 1. As you can see, I do get a waiver, but it's not going to be enough. I did, however, smartly stay out of their charge range because I know what Indomitable Will does. So moving on to turn 2. So turn 2 for the Kingdoms of Men, they advance forward, as you can see. We've got the Mountain Who Rides hiding from my Siege Breakers. I really like this maneuver because they do have the Blade of the Beast Slayer, and everything in my Ogre army is a beast, so they can punch it with Crushing 3. So I actually really like this maneuver. It keeps this unit within their inspiring range. I didn't set up any counter charges. I should have maneuvered this ASB to be facing more like this. Since I could see that. But yeah, I didn't. So there's no countercharge onto these Berserker Braves. So they're going to have to do it on their own. And Berserker Braves are, being a 4+ to hit unit, they fail a lot. They have a lot of attacks. They're really solid as a regiment. So good. I used to run the Butchers instead, the Butcher regiments, because they were fearless and I could ally them, but it was really a toss-up between them and Berserker Braves, which I've also run. The Berserker Braves do more damage, and then the Butchers take more damage, or can take more damage. So I still feel that way now. Butcher regiments are fine to ally in, but I wanted a bit more damage in this list, so I brought the Berserkers. And so anyway, these guys go into them. The Berserkers are going to be fearless and likely aren't going to die to a hindered charge from a troop of mounted sergeants, but that doesn't matter too much because now this unit is being held up for at least one turn, and if my opponent gets even a little bit lucky, not even significantly, they're going to get 2 turns of combat out of this unit, which is what you want out of a chaff unit. If you can hold your opponent for 2 turns, 2 of their turns, your chaff are golden, right? That's the gold standard. So anyway, especially when you outdrop them. So they circle me. I think that the knights are being too pensive here. They should have pushed as far as they could, stay out of 12, but like stay exactly out of 12 of me. And if these guys were running Brew of Strength, I don't even know if they need to stay out of 12, because that's still 32 attack. Well, no, this is a Siegebreaker unit, so yeah, stay out of 12, because they're def 6. But yeah, just stay exactly out of 12. Anyway, the rest of the army just advances forward. We've got the militia going onto the hill to threaten the invisible Siegebreakers. And don't worry, I did inform my opponent. I was like pointing out there is a unit right here the entire game, just so they wouldn't forget it during all of their movements. So it's my mistake, right? They don't need to be punished for it. And then these guys move forward, protecting their flank in the same way. One second. Gin sour. So good. Anyway, these pikemen are protecting their flank in the similar way that I did over here with the boomers. This Siegebreaker horde, I believe, is in their flank. Maybe it's not, but they are protected that way, right? So I have no flank charge due to the militia moving forward, and that's going to be that. Let's move to the right. You can see the right. My opponent holds back a little bit here, and I'm not sold on this, right? So these mounted sergeants might just be out of place because they are in the terrain and then they don't have any pathfinder, right? So I look at them and I'm like, well, maybe you just misplaced this unit because they can see overall these ones. So I think that deploying them checkerboard, maybe, here would have been stronger. That way you could slide the units to the left or to the right and then charge into my units anyway, because you want to be disrupting these boomers. And they're not. So I think at least this unit should have gone for a charge on the boomers, which I believe it had in the front. And these guys probably, I don't know, this is actually fine because they have range attacks. And again, I prefer the mounted scouts to the sergeants because I prefer something like this where I just run in front and I get a round of shooting. I don't have to do the very ineffectual charge, right? So I can hold up this unit by parking myself in front of it, but then I can shoot another one, right? So shoot into this unit, which is already damaged and has other guns pointed at it. So this is a pretty good move. Anyway, you can see that this guy's tipping over. He is 50% in the terrain just to make sure that they are within 9 inches there. So that's going to be that. Let's go into the shooting. We start with the ballista. Look at that. God, what a good model. Solid stuff. Fire into my regiment of chariots and furthering the 2 damage. They hit last turn and they hit this turn. So pretty good unit so far. Managing 4 damage onto my chariots. Then the crossbows managed 3 damage, it looks like, onto these boomers. I think that these ones were not the ones at 2. And then we have these guys putting 1 damage in combat onto... Neither of those units are wavered or killed, by the way. And then we have this unit of mounted sergeants hindered, doing 1 damage to my Berserker Braves. Yeah, whatever. And here is the end of turn shot. So things are looking a little bit interesting. You can see... I don't know. I kind of like this look of this deployment, right? So we have these like nice little waves forming this ravine in the middle, but I'm about to close that distance. These guys being at, what are they, at 16 wounds? It's the same thing. I'm just going to fire as many boomers as it takes, get them to double 1s, and then the rest of my shooting can go into some of these smaller units. It's taking me a turn longer than I would have hoped for, but I'm still on track. So let's move into Ogre Turn 2. So Ogre Turn 2, I open by sending these Berserker Braves into the front of the mounted sergeants. Again, it's not the hardest kill, but it is 4+ to hit units, so you're never sure. I move forward with this ASB. I've made it so this Knight Horde cannot pivot and hit this unit of Siegebreakers. It might look like they can, but they'll actually hit my edge before that happens. So anyway, that's the plan there. The Siegebreakers actually had a flank charge onto the militia. I'm just going to go for that because I want to delete this unit out move forward with the Berserker Braves, and then either to the side if I need to with them to block these, what are they, foot guard up, or, you know, if these guys go far enough, I will just turn to face towards the Night Horde because I need to. So that's the plan. It looks like this horde was in fact in the front, so they just decided to take the charge to the pikemen. I only need 1 wound, right? That would put them at 17. I'm brutal, so 18. So not double ones to waver. They no longer have Indomitable Will to pop, so that's fine. When you got them to 1 wound to get them a double 1 waver, that's good. And then on the right here, you can see I take both my chariots into the fights that they've got. This is a regiment of militia. So, I mean, Ogre Chariots are very interesting. I really like them. I didn't love them last edition, outside of that, frankly, ridiculous formation, which I liked just because I like, what are they, the warlords, Ogre warlords, but they're not very point efficient, so they're not the best thing to run. But last edition, with that ridiculous formation with the double regiment, it was so good that you, of course, ran the warlord, and they themselves were pretty solid. I wish they had a bit more to them to make them worth running. But these guys, I think, are definitely worth it. These regiments are relatively cheap. They are very deadly at speed 8 with 15 attacks, 3+ melee, crush 1, thunder 2, and, of course, brutal. So just an excellent unit. And then I move forward with the boomers. I'm just going to fire at what I've got. I'm not afraid of fighting any of these units except for this unit of foot guard, so just stay at a 10 of that. Also, the Fanatic Instigator would be bad. So we're just staying at a range of these 2 units. We're going to try to kill off this Fanatic troop. That would also be bad to fight, but I think I can manage the kill there because they're def 3 and a dash 11. And then anything else is gravy, so I can go for whatever I want. So let's go into the shooting. We have the Boomer Horde here, firing into my opponent's troop of mounted sergeants. I managed 6 wounds there, so I'm feeling good. And then they are popped. I have the Boomer Horde here, firing into the troop of fanatics. I managed 10 wounds, and they are popped. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Let's go back a few pictures real quick. This one, yeah, this Berserker Brave actually ended up rolling high enough on the wild charge, which my opponent had forgotten about. I was talking about it, but we were talking about a lot of stuff. You know, the election results were pouring in on this Friday, and specifically in the state. We might have had a bit of a heated conversation about, anyway, about voting and the importance of it. So anyway, I ended up getting a wild charge into this Fanatic troop. This is a mistake, but one that my opponent probably could have easily avoided by remembering that I have wild charge. So anyway, gonna go back to that. Yeah, I do 10 wounds. I actually popped, I did 10 wounds? That's impossible. I only have 8 attacks. This must have rolled. Because I remember this. I popped the Blood of the Old Kings. I was like, yeah, it's a really interesting item on the Berserker Bully, because the Berserker Bully is 8 attacks on 3s and then crushing 2, right? But that's sort of in that range where getting +1 or +2 wounds is really important for killing off small units like this, but importantly, I don't have so many attacks that I'm going to take a ton of wounds in return because of getting 1 wound per elite and vicious reroll. Instead here, I hit with all 8 attacks, wound with all 8 attacks, and I don't use elite or vicious. So I pop the item, it does nothing, but who am I to argue when you roll that well? So I do 8 wounds here, plus my brutal, that's a double 1 pop. I don't roll it, they're gone. Over here, I do 9 wounds with my chariot regiment. You might notice these dice right here. Yep, I get the double 1. So they are a 10-12, which means this was an actual important double 1, and they are not devastated because, again, devastated is a nothing rule. And off here in the center, actually, I think I actually rolled pretty poorly here on the militia. I did a couple wounds. Maybe I killed them? I don't know. I do remember I rolled poorly, except for the nerve roll. Over here, the horde of... what are these? Siege Breakers, the invisible Siege Breakers, do manage to kill off that horde of pike, and because they had the 3 loot tokens, I gather them all up. Again, a mistake. I don't think that unit should have had it, just because there's only 1 pike horde, and I have a lot of shooting, and there wasn't a lot of area terrain to go into in the center of the map, so I don't think that they were a good unit for it. And on top of it, I don't think my opponent should have advanced forward with the Indomitable Will. They could have popped it and done something to protect them a bit more, but yeah, because I can engage them in melee with especially a unit like Siege Breakers, I get to pick up all 3 loot tokens, and on top of it, this unit which survives the Foot Guard, I can just rotate out of their line of sight, as you can see here. So I am facing like so, and that's going to be that. In the center combat, yeah, I managed to kill off that regiment of militia with the Siege Breakers alone. I overrun with these guys. They overrun, I think, 5 inches, which was enough to bump into this unit, and that'll block the charge for the Siege Breakers because now I am farther this way, and these guys cannot disengage the 1 and get that charge, right? Because I'm not engaged with them. So they're just going to have to charge the Berserker Braves and deal with it. And that lets the Siege Breakers just turn towards the Night Horde over here, which cannot charge them right now due to my ASB, but can in the future. And on top of it, I have a charge down a hill, so I'll get the Thunderous 1. So 18 attacks on 3s and 2s. Pretty nice. And over here, we get our double 1/2 of the game and of the turn, where I charge in with the Berserker Braves here. I do 8 wounds, and again, that's not a double 1. No, that is. It's a 3 to kill them with Brutal. So this is another double 1 that does matter, and again, a Devastated that doesn't. Not that they have it. So anyway, pretty funny there. And here is the end of turn shot. Even with the 2 double 1s, my opponent's in a lot of trouble right now because I've deleted both these chaff units that I shot at. I deleted this chaff unit. They are down to just these, like the Foot Guard are great, right? But this Foot Guard is facing off against some Berserker Braves. They could kill them, they could fail, but Siege Breakers are ready to finish them anyway. These guys can't see anything and are out of... I think they're out of charge range to charge the Chariot regiment, which is good. Yeah, these guys did roll poorly on their hits and wounds, but did then just delete the Militia. And it's funny because my opponent is the same one that I played against their Ogre Army a couple weeks ago, and they forgot all the skull pulls, right? In this game, I forgot I had Brutal for the first roll, and I'm like, I failed to kill you by 1 because the Fanatics or the Militia had that weird +3 range of nerve. And then I'm like, oh right, I'm Brutal. So yeah, on the second on second glance, we end up killing that off. And I'm out of 10 inches here, so I'll just accept it on the boomers and let it go. Speaking of that, I did go for some heals on Noma here, casting heal onto my boomers. I actually wanted to cast it onto these Chariots, but in the end, I think this is a better heal because these Chariots are out of charge range anyway. So getting the, making sure that these guys don't just come in one turn me, because they are a rather deadly unit. So yeah, pretty good there. And with that, we'll go into turn 3. So turn 3, third sip of the drink. All right, so turn 3. We have the double 1 boys here going into my, I guess, wounded Berserker Braves. They have 1 wound on them. So yeah, going in there, my opponent decides to not send the general into anything, which is okay. Definitely didn't want to send it into the Siege Breakers. That's a terrible charge, but this one might have been okay because these guys can I think there's 7 attacks on 4s and 4s now, and then this guy's like 5 attacks on 3s and 2s. So that might have been enough. I don't know. They are a -15. It's a little ridiculous. I remember at the time thinking the general should have charged here, but maybe they couldn't see either. But anyway, they definitely, I was thinking they were a -13. Being a -15, probably not worth it. The Night Horde gets into the fight, albeit with an ASB, so they'll cream that, move forward. And the Foot Guard here do take the charge into my Berserker Braves. Off here on the right, the Fanatic Instigator goes into the flank of my Siege Breakers. That seems fair. I didn't actually realize how ridiculous these guys are in combat. Pretty strong assassin choice. I don't know. I've never run them, but I've heard good things about them. So good to see him on the table. And I think that's John Umber there. So cool model. We have the other Foot Guard. These guys have the Blade of Slashing go into the front of my boomers. That's a really good charge because I don't think these Chariots can see their flank either. So I mean, I have a horde of boomers here, so I guess it's not that important, but at least the Chariots won't be able to do it. And then these mounted scouts, which I double 1'd, go into the front of my unwounded Chariots. I'm feeling fine about that, but I don't know. Maybe it's just fate that these guys kill me off. And then, of course, and this is, again, a golden unit because it's going to take me 2 turns to get through them. Then we have the ASB here deciding to take a charge into the Berserker Brave. And I'm like, I don't know. This would be a pretty solid move in version 2, right? Because it would block me up. But you have to actually wound me now because this is not a mighty individual. So I'm just going to charge right through it. So I don't know. I think it was trying to protect the flank of these guys. If it does a hit and a wound, it's a fair play. But that's a hindered charge, right? 6 is to hit, 4 is to wound. I don't know. That's an 8%-ish shot. Not the best. But the Ballista does have a decent shot. So moving forward, I think this is a shot of the Ballista. I think the Ballista, this Wizard with Lightning Bolt 3, and the Crossbow Regiment are going to fire into me. They manage 4 wounds onto my Chariot Regiment, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's a fair number of wounds. It's a 7 to waver me. This might have actually been, I think this is before the Ballista's fired, because I think this is the turn it hit twice, so and maxed out its hits and wounds. So I think that's just with the Lightning Bolt and Regiment. And over here, you can see these combats. They go all right. I mean, these guys doing 8 wounds. They've got 12 attacks on 3s, and then they wound me on 3s, and they reroll 1 failed wound. So 8 is quite a few, but still, it doesn't kill me, so who cares? And then the Siege Breakers take 2 wounds from the Archers, which is funny, but it's not enough to waver them, especially good, because these are the Headstrong ones, not the Chalice of Wrath guys. So being wavered would have sucked there. I don't want to rely on a 3+ to kill off Archers. And these Chariots take a charge and take 0 wounds. Actually, I think my opponent didn't even hit me, so pretty bad rolling there. But lovely models, of course. And then these guys go into my Horde of Boomers, manage 4 wounds. That's 3s and 3s with 1 reroll. Not the best. But 4 wounds is better than no wounds, so don't get a waiver, and I stare him down. And here we go with the end of turn shot. You can see these guys walk right through the ASB. I think we just double won this because we're on a time constraint here, right? Obviously, we gotta vacate the area so people can do their tele worship. So anyway, we go for that and just double won it. They kill them off. These guys, I think, did another wound to my Berserker Braves. Don't kill them, and that's going to be the end of the turn there. So let's go into turn 3 for the Ogres. So turn 3 for the Ogres, we have the Berserker Braves here going to finish off this wounded unit. We have the Horde of Siege Breakers going in to try to finish off or actually start, but probably finish the Regiment of Archers. We have these Berserker Braves going into... There's no way my opponent charged with this ASB, because that would just give me a charge into it and then into... Yeah, I think my opponent originally did that charge, and I was like, no, take that back. Or maybe they decided to take it back. Let's go with that narrative where they charged here and then went, no, that's stupid, because I'll just overrun through them. They walk it back, so I go into the Regiment of Foot Guard. And these guys go back into the Fanatic Instigator, which actually did 5 wounds. I think it has 5 attacks. So it hit on 3s, wounded on 4s, I think, because it's in the flank, and managed 5 wounds. So that's pretty impressive, but I wasn't wavered, and these guys are Chalice of Wrath anyway. So they're going to try to kill off that Fanatic Instigator. And this is Noma Garok just moving here. I'm going to go for the heal on the Siege Breakers, partly because I want to make sure I kill off this Regiment of Archers, not because they're super, super important for killing off this unit, because there's a Horde of Knights right there, but more importantly, it just allows me to move up if I want to fight over here on my opponent's side, and on top of it, just removes 1 more unit that they can use to score. So that's my plan. And then, of course, getting the Vicious is nice. But the big thing is just removing 2 wounds. I am defense 6, so it might be important in the end. And over here, we have the charges you'd expect. We've got the Chariot Regiment. Had an easy charge into the flank of this ASB. It is hindered, but I don't care. I don't care if I live or die there. These guys are in the front. It's kind of whatever. I'm already at 8 wounds. Then I have this Chariot Regiment go into the Mounted Scouts. They're already in double ones. I hide my ASB with all the loot counters. You can finally see them right behind this height 4 unit, just for my opponent shooting, so they have no shots. I take the Boomers here into the front of the Foot Guard, and because that ASB, the Lannister over there, failed to ground my Berserker Bully, I have an easy rear charge, because that's a yielding character, into the rear of these Foot Guards, so not looking great for them. The other Boomers move forward, as you can see. I think I have range onto this unit. Otherwise, there's no reason to do that. But anyway, that's that. And then I move this ASB around just to make sure I've got the Inspire Bubble going. And then this guy's got a Lightning Bolt onto the my opponent's General. So a clear shot with Lightning Bolt 9 is pretty solid. And over here, we start with the Boomers. They fire into this regiment of crossbows. I manage, I think, 4 wounds. It's showing there, and I do get a waiver. So pretty lucky shot there. And here is the end of turn shot. So I'll explain this a little bit. First off, let's talk about the hits and wounds from shooting. So first off, yeah, I did get a waiver here. It was not a kill. And then this guy here, the Mountain Who Rides, I did 2 wounds with my Lightning Bolt. So not the best, not the worst. And I didn't get a waiver. You know, as you might expect, I do heal 2 wounds off here, so they're vicious. And then in the combats, So in the combats, I managed to kill off this double 1 unit here with my Berserker Brave regiment. I'm pretty happy with that. And then I turn to face just to make sure that my opponent knows they're gonna get charged into the flank or the rear unless they reposition this unit. I don't manage to do anything to the foot guard. No, I wavered them. I think I wavered them. Because I roll, I mean, it's a 4+ to hit unit, just kind of does what it does. But I still roll pretty well there. I do manage to kill off the Archer Regiment with my Siege Breakers. The other Siege Breakers paste that Fanatic Instigator and turn back to face this side. And then these Boomers, the Boomers managing to kill off that... well, I guess the this guy was in the rear. But I roll abysmally with this guy. I've got, what is that, 24 attacks on 3s and 2s. And I think I did 3 wounds with that guy. So unfortunate. But the Boomers then go like, yeah, we got it, boss, and just beat up that unit, kill them off in one go. My Chariots over here managed to kill off the other double 1 unit, and then these Chariots, I kill off the ASB, and then I have a question, which is, I mean, I don't have a question, anyway, I sit there and I go, I've killed the ASB. I can overrun into that wavered unit of crossbows, but you have to take the second nerve roll rolled. So if I roll in there and I roll poorly and then roll up that nerve check and they're steady, they'll just be steady. They'll be disordered, right? But they'll be able to do something on their turn. And I don't know, were this a tournament, I would probably just let them be and just turn to face with my Chariots here. But as this was not a tournament game, I went at caution can be damned, and I go into the front of them. Plus, I'm hitting on 4s with 15 attacks and wounding still on 2s, so, and with Brutal. So I roll in there. I managed 1 wound total, but Lady Luck was with me. I roll the 9 I need to kill them, and I got them in one go. Here's some Corona beers just to, show off that we have, I guess, a sense of humor. So anyway, that's going to be the end of the turn. Let's move forward to turn 4. So turn 4 for the Kingdoms of Men. Their kingdom is crumbling right now. They've got to get something going. So we've got the Night Horde going into the front of the Siege Breakers. I think that that's fair. I probably would have sent the Mountain in there as well, the General, just to... Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe definitely is wrong, but if they had done that, the General would be here. Right, the Knights would push this way. They can pop their J-boots, right? So this wall does not matter. They'll push against that, which will allow the... No, they're still going to get flank charged. Never mind, it doesn't matter. But they take the General... I was going to say you could put the General here and then the Night Horde here, right? So the General can at least block a charge, maybe. But it's not really going to work with these guys. Granted, it'll make them hindered on that flank charge. So maybe it's worth it to lose the General that way. Or to tempt my General, or attempt my Yetis that way. But in the end, my opponent doesn't go for that. Goes for the Night Horde in the front of the Siege Breakers. These guys, again, I believe are wavered, but are indomitable. So they pop it and go in here. And then the General goes into Nomagarok, which is, fair play. And this unit, I guess nothing's happening there. I took 4 wounds from the Fanatic Instigators, so maybe they failed with one of them. And here is on the right, my opponent has 1 lonely ballista to fire at my units. I think it's going to fire at this unit of Cav to try to kill them off because they are at 8 wounds, so you might as well. And we've got these guys, I guess, they pop their Indomitable, walk right through my Berserker Braves. Fair. Look at those guys. God, what lovely models. And over here, the Night Horde, yeah, they pop those siege breakers. But this is what I mean by having crushing strength, because in this game, just because of how I was deployed, I didn't need to face off against these knights. But my opponent could have deployed them more centrally, and then if they had the Brew of Strength, they're really dangerous, because I can't just send ASBs there, turn off their Thunderous Charge, and go try to kill my siege breakers, right? Because without Thunderous Charge, this unit does, I mean, it does wounds, it's solid, but you know, hitting on 3s and wounding on 6s, I don't know if that gets the job done. But anyway, they're not that, so they go into my siege breakers, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, and just blow them right out of the water. And here is the end of turn 4 for the Kingdoms of Men. You can see they've killed off the Berserker Braves there, they've killed off the Siege Breakers here, and they killed off the Chariots here. They did have cover, but this is the turn my opponent hit with both those shots on 5s, and just, bleh, they're gone. So, but things are looking quite grim. My opponent does turn with the Night Horde to make sure that this is a front charge, not a flank charge. I'm not super worried about it, though. I don't even need to charge with this unit, to be fair, but I probably will. Or maybe if I get a high enough wild charge, I can go into the Mountain Who Rides. So we'll see. With Ogre Turn 4, yes, it looks like it did roll high enough to go into the side here. Noma took 2 wounds, maybe 3 wounds, so is disordered but can charge. Noma Garak is 5 attacks on 4s with Crush 1 and Brutal. I think he's Crush 1, but so a pretty decent melee combatant. So I'm looking to just kill off this general real quick. It's already at 2 wounds. I've got these guys in the side as well. Not that I, double my attacks or anything, but that's, I think, 15 more attacks on 4s and 3s, or 4s and 4s. And of course, I have the good old Brutal. So I'm looking to kill off this unit, and then I can turn to face with these Berserker Braves, and then just sit here with Noma again. Now, these Siege Breakers are risking it for that biscuit. So I decide, oh no, I'm not going to risk it. I did have the loot tokens, and originally I was like, oh yeah, I'll take this charge. And I was like, just drop the loot tokens. What are you doing? So yeah, I drop all 3 loot tokens, and then I take the charge into the wounded foot guard. My plan is to kill them and overrun, I guess, or maybe I'll just turn to face. It doesn't really matter. I just need to make sure this Night Horde cannot get over here, because I have all the loot tokens, except for the one that this unit has. I think they picked up the center one on one of their turns. So anyway, that's going to be the plan, is just hide all the loot away from the knights and make it so they have to kill all my units one by one. Since I don't have individuals, I have ogres. So anyway, that's going to be that. And it's turn 4, so I have 1, 2, 3 units. Assuming I kill this unit off, and these wizards don't blow me out of the water, I plan to just go 1 unit, 2 unit, and then 3 unit if there's a turn 7. So that's the plan. And over here on the right, yeah, there's not a whole lot to do. I just turn everything towards the Night Horde. Both these units, I think at least one of the boomers is within range to shoot at the knights this turn, and I'm just going to let the ballista do what it wants. So that's that. And here we go with my shooting. So yes, we have my Lightning Bolt Wizard here, so that'll be a Lightning Bolt 8. And then we have both the boomers, no, we just have these boomers firing into the knights, who are slightly on the hill, so they'll have cover, but they already have cover, so whatever. And over here, yep, we do 7 wounds to the knights, which is pretty solid. There's no heal in this list, so it gets them manageable. I might be able to get a waiver. Granted, they're indomitable, so it won't matter. But I could get a waiver, or I could get a hill. A kill. I already have a hill. So yeah, just every wound counts in lists that can't heal, especially when they're running out of units. So with that, we go into the combat, and the Mountain Who Rides turns out to be tougher than I thought. Noma hits with 0 attacks on a 4+, and then my unit to the flank does a few and does get a waiver. But yeah, I was really going like, man, I really wanted that kill. So I guess they're going to be alive. And then this unit here, I hadn't rolled before I took this picture, which is a bit of a mistake. So let's move forward. Yep. So here is the actual kill shot, which is I did manage to kill off this horde here, and I turn to face. So my opponent now can charge this unit in the flank or this unit in the front. It'll delete either of them. I don't think this is a big difference with the mountain living, because they are wavered and they don't have indomitable. So I'm just gonna sit here and go like, okay, so you'll have to kill one of these units with the knights, which is fine. And then you have to choose what your 2 wizards and ballista are gonna fire at to try to kill, because they need to start dropping these units, right? So this one, this, and these guys. You can't fire at Noma because they're hidden behind the boomers and the hill. Then you could fire at this unit, right? They're at 2 wounds, but it really just depends on what the ballista does, because the wizards are not going to do too much, I don't think, because they're going to be firing. I'm definitely 50% on this hill. So I think that they go for the knights here, and then they try to kill this unit off, but it's really, really dicey. And my opponent, we're already running a little late at this point. My opponent just throws in the towel there. So it ends up being I have all 7 loot tokens. I do not have any on my opponent's side of the table, so it is 7-0, not 14-0. But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting game right there, but we'll talk about that in the conclusions. So, conclusions and list discussion. Let's start with talking about these lists, specifically the Kingdoms of Men, then we'll talk about the Ogres. So, Kingdoms of Men are a list that I really like, which you might have gathered earlier when I went on a bit of a tirade. I really like Kingdoms of Men. I think that they're an excellent army. I think that they have a bunch of different builds in them, which is generally how I rate if an army is excellent or not, or competitive builds, I mean. So one of the things, first off, Spear Phalanx, amazing unit, Indomitable Will, plus always take the pikes. Always just take both these upgrades and bam, you're done. You can buy other equipment. I've run them a bit more offensively with Brew of Strength or stuff like that. But in the end, I think that keeping them defensive is a little bit better, and I think that they are another multiplicative unit, which is they don't look too good when you bring one of them, but every unit you bring beyond one is even better. And they're another unit that in regiments are also terrifying, because Phalanx and Snare regiments with 15 attacks, Indomitable Will, ooh, so good. In fact, I think that might be better than the Hordes. Depends on your list. I have one where I run a bunch of Fanatic regiments. But I think no matter how you're going to do it in Kingdoms of Men, a lot of regiments is a good thing. So again, there was an unplugged radio where Mike Rossi, a countercharge where Mike Rossi wrote in asking about are infantry regiments good enough in the game right now? And I think it just depends on, one, how you're using them, obviously. But 2, just the army. I think dwarves are an army that does have good infantry regiments, but Kingdoms of Men are another one where they're excellent. The Spear Phalanx, the Foot Guard, and the Fanatics all make really good regiments, and you can spam them. So yeah, I think they're still out there. Anyway, moving on to the Foot Guard. I don't like Foot Guard. I don't, I'm not going to make fun of anyone for running them. They're a solid unit. They're efficient. They've got the 12 attacks. Their nerve is fine. And then they can, of course, take the Crushing Strength upgrade, which I think you'll probably do if you're going to run Foot Guard. But I'm not a fan of them. I prefer the Fanatics to hit because Fanatics hit on a 3+. They also have the Crushing one, and they're just plain fearless. Plus, they're cheaper and have Wild Charge. And I treat both units as sort of disposable. So if you're going to take that Crush 1, knocking them down to Defense 4, a 14-16 Defense 4 unit is just not that hard to kill off in Kings of War right now. Which, Kings of War, a lot of people confuse it for, I don't know, as a small aside, a lot of people confuse Kings of War as being a lot like Warhammer, or I guess not confused, but they relate it a lot to the old Warhammer. I don't. I relate it strongly to War Machine as a game I used to play, right? And that is because Warhammer was a peace trading game, but it wasn't I go, you go completely. You charged into a unit and you punched them and then they punched you, right? Or vice versa, depending on how many elves there were. But yeah, it was one of those give and take units. So every time you charged, you were going to take some damage back. That's not how Kings of War works. Kings of War, you're statted and your opponent just doesn't attack you in such a way that you're going to walk in there and go, okay, so I'm going for double 1 combats every time, right? Or somewhere in there, or double 1 waivers, or a 4 or 5 to waivers. Doesn't matter, right? Like good dice, waiver, or kill. And when you're talking about that with the regiments, again, to go back to Mike Rossi's comment on countercharge, I think that that's what he's hitting is, and what we're all hitting, really. I'm not against Mike. I think he brought up a really good point, which is why I keep talking about it. But, when you're talking about these units, they just evaporate when they're regiments as opposed to a horde. It's the same weakness, or the major weakness that is in the Ogre Army, is that their nerve is good, but it's not great, right? It's 15-17, that's easily killable in Kings of War by 1 unit, or 2 units in the front, right? So it's just not that high. So I look at the foot guard and I go, I'd rather just have fanatics if they're gonna go and just be, a missile that I fire into my opponent, watch them die, do a bunch of damage. So I prefer that. But if you're gonna run foot guard, run them. They're fine. Militia Mob. This is another unit that I've heard people rate poorly, and they're just wrong. In this case, they're a 70-point regiment. 70 points for unit strength 2. And then they have whatever stats, and then a pretty decent nerve. They're 11-14. That's not great. It's not bad, though, for a unit that costs 70 points again, that you're just going to put on objectives, or you're going to run around the table, watch them die. It doesn't matter. They have a high break value for what they cost, and that's all that matters here. So pretty good unit. I recommend them. Fanatics, again, I love them in regiments. I've run them in hordes as well. That wasn't quite as good. That was kind of a dicier thing. I did it in Call to Arms, and I double won. I played in my round 1, I played hordes of fanatics, and I got a double 1 that lost me the game. And if they were regiments, it wouldn't have happened that way. Or if I just, played better, but whatever on that one. But yeah, so I think fanatics are best in regiments, but troops, I could see it. 95 points. I don't know. It's not my favorite. I don't like troops of depth 3 in a game where there's height 5 lightning bolt, right? They're just going to die against Night Stalkers, or even height 3 boomers were enough. So, I don't know. The bowmen, crossbow, I mean, they're fine. Their points are fine, but I probably wouldn't run them. If I did, I'd probably run the bowmen, I want to say. Bowmen for regiments, 100 points for 10 shots on 5s, and they're still melee 5+. Seems fine. Knight Hordes. Now, this is a unit, I do not like knight regiments at all. In Kingdoms of Men, I like them in like elves and such. I don't like knight regiments because that is the old style of play. That's version 2 Kings of War. You need to be advancing forward with your thoughts here, which is, again, a knight horde is just an infantry block, like a ceremonial guard or any of those other units, that is an anchor point for your army and just obliterates anything it touches, right? Like, imagine that stat line, the knight stat line right here, as an infantry regiment, right? Where you're like, okay, so they're infantry, they're speed 8, they're melee 3+, defense 5+, then they have height 3, so they have a good height advantage, they have good unit strength at 4, then they have 32 attacks and thunderous charge 2. And people go like, oh yeah, but they're gonna hit the cover and then they're -1 thunderous charge. If you saw an infantry unit with that, you would not even, like, what is that argument? Yeah, sure, they'll hit cover if you hit cover. Just don't, right? Just hold them back, use them as a countercharge unit, like Draken Hordes or anything like that. They can alpha strike, but commonly I don't think they should. So anyway, Knight Hordes, amazing. Indomitable Will on them, always 100% of the time. J-Boots is fine. But I'd probably only bring J-Boots if I was running out of points, which you can do in Kingdoms of Men. But I would always try to shoot for that. Brew of Strength is best, and then Blessing of the Gods, Chant of Fate below that. I wouldn't bring Sharpness. Then we have Mounted Sergeants. They're okay, and they're really only okay. They're a good unit. I shouldn't say they're bad, but I think that they're only okay because mounted scouts exist right there, and I'd rather just have some plinking damage on my little nimble units. It's just better in my opinion. The Ballista, you can run it. I don't like it. It's fine. Whatever. Moving on. The General, Blade of the Beast Slayer General, I get that my opponent wanted to run the Mountain Who Rides and make it like have that feel to it, have that gravitas, and you know what? More power to them. I think this unit is absolutely fine, but if you're going to run it, I'd rather just see the Captain. Blade of the Beast Slayer, compared to the Captain. I'd rather just have Rally 1 is amazing, and then the redeploy is okay, but it's really that Rally 1, just so good in this army. Then we have the ASBs, good stuff, but you need to put items on them. Why do you have Bane Chant on your wizards instead of having the loot on at least one of these ASBs? What is that? That's a missed opportunity right there, is what I think it is. And then we have the Fanatic Instigator, a pretty solid unit. I think it needs wings. The D3 speed 10 chargers I think are actually pretty solid. It goes down to defense 3, but who cares? Yeah, so I think I would give it wings or probably not run it. But if you were going to run it, again, it's one of those units where you could play it well enough that I would be like, okay, I see it. It's fine. It's not like it's competing in a spot that the list doesn't otherwise have. It has 6 attacks. It's really powerful. So anyway, Moving on to the Wizards, the last bit here. They are the best unit, and this is a complete waste of their potential, in my opinion. Yes, the Lightning Bolt 3, originally my opponent, I think, didn't swap out. That's always a mistake. Always bring Lightning Bolt if you can. It's better than Fireball in every way. But, or almost every way. It's not, I'm being hyperbolic there, but bring Lightning Bolt. And then always give them the Pegasus upgrade. It's so cheap. It's so amazing. People that talk about how gargoyles are this amazing unit, which they are, gargoyles are amazing, are nothing compared to a Pegasus wizard. So good. If you're going to bring the wizard, bring the Pegasus until they nerf it. Just do it. I don't know how you would do that in this Kingdoms of Men. This is the Song of Ice and Fire. I don't know how big the dragon models are. I know they released them, but I've never seen them. So if, Viserion is like, fitting on a 50 pretty well, yeah, just run some Targaryens. And you already have, I think, some Wildmen. You've definitely got some Starks in there, some Night's Watch and Lannisters. So yeah, throw some Targaryens in. Looks good. Anyway, that's it for my thoughts on the Kingdoms of Men. Let's move on to the Ogres. This is, I actually like this list. I've been playing with variants of it for a while now, in and out for the entirety of version 3. I think that the 2-2-2-2-2 plan works well with them, where you just bring, 2 of a unit, 2 of a unit, 2 of a unit. I really like having boomers in all my lists. I don't think boomers are the best unit, but that's only because ice elementals are so ridiculous, and you can ally them into this army. But still, boomers are fine. They're absolutely fine. Right, they do what they say on the tin. I would like to fit some shooters into this list, but I'm not exactly sure how I finagle that. Anyway, then the Siege Breakers are another. They're not an auto include, but they're pretty close. There isn't a melee. There isn't a horde melee unit that does what Siege Breakers do in Ogres. You've got your Hunters, you've got your Warriors, and you've got your Berserkers, right? But I don't think any of those are nearly as good as just being Defense 6. So I think the Siege Breakers, they have a nice side grade from the previous edition where they lost to Crushing, they lost to Thunderous, and they gained a Speed. I think that's a great way to balance that unit a bit more. They stay with the army, they're Speed 6 now. They're not quite as brutal. They're not quite as like, why are you running this unit when you could be running Siege Breakers? But still, I look at them and I go, if I'm going to have a melee unit in the army, it's going to be Siege Breakers for infantry. The Ogre Chariots, I love Ogre Chariots. I don't know. I love them in hordes. I love them in regiments. I love them in legions. I haven't tried them in troops yet, but that's only because what I value most about them is they're not cheap, but they're not particularly expensive, especially at regiment level. They have a lot of damage potential, so these are my guided missiles that are a little tougher, so they can survive a round or two. They're thick missiles, I guess. And lastly, the legions are that way to get nerve in the list, because I don't like the red goblins for ogres for mechanical reasons. I think they're great in the army. I love the lore, and sometimes I do run red goblins because I think they're really fun. But I don't want my big nerve unit to be slower than my line when my line isn't cav speed, right? So like having, again, with the Kingdoms of Men list, you have these speed 5 units, and then you have your speed 8 or greater units, right? Ogres don't do that. If I were to replace the Chariots with nerve blocks, I now have speed 5 units and then speed 6 units, and that's not quite enough for me. I don't like that speed differential. So yeah, you can run legions of Warrior Chariots there. The Ogre Warlock, I think one of these is an amazing pick with the boomstick. It's 125 points artillery. That is so good. It's base Lightning Bolt 6. It's going to be Lightning Bolt 8 to 9 in the game in almost every turn. And then on top of it, it's got those 2 attacks. If you're going to run the Red Goblins, I think the Ogre Warlock is a great thing to have, because Brutal does not require you to hit and wound with the Brutal unit. You just need to do a wound in the combat period. And Ogre Warlocks are melee 4+ with 2 attacks and Crush 1 and Brutal. So they'll do a point of damage in a pinch, right? The Ogre ASB, I think everyone knows about these. They're amazing. They're 70 points for, 3 attacks, Crush 1, Brutal, Defense 5 is huge, and Melee 3+. So they're your ASB, but 20 points more and way, way, way better. The Berserker Bully, pretty good pick. I've fallen out of love with it. I ran a bunch of them at the beginning of the edition, and now I'm not. I don't think it's a bad pick. I think it's still really good. It's got 8 attacks. It's got Crush 2. It's got that Brutal. It's got Wild Charge D3 and Nimble. Amazing unit. but it's still a little pricey. And I'm starting to see things like Nomagorok and the Ogre Warlock. And again, I want those Ogre Shooters in the list to build a much more stand back and fire army. And the Berserker Bully might fall out there. The Blood of the Old King was interesting. I didn't get to use it at all. I mean, I used it, but it just didn't matter. I do kind of like the inclusion. It's 15 points, which is a bit much, I think. But it's still pretty solid because you've got that 8 attack block, right? So you're probably not going to do enough hits and wounds to really kill yourself with it. But you are going to do... This is one of those units, again, because of its 8 attacks and brutal, that getting +1 or +2 in the combats it wants to be in is important. So, I don't know. Try it out. And Nomagorok, what an amazing wizard. It was great last edition. It's great this edition. It's actually a little bit better. It's a little bit better and a little bit worse. I really like its new stat block. I like that it has Lightning Bolt instead of its gun. Really cool. But what I don't like is that it gets the Bloodlust off of heal and not off of heal and Banechant. Because I look at that and I go, why do they have Banechant then? I mean, it's okay, but it's so niche at that point where you're going to go, okay, I'd rather have Crushing Strength 1 instead, or +1 Crushing, right? In an Ogre Army, instead of healing for N value plus Vicious, right? Vicious is almost as good as that +1, and then some places is much better because ogres already have a lot of crushing strength, and then you're not, and you're getting a heal on top of it. I just don't see why you would cast that Banechant in almost any circumstance. And it's not to say that there aren't circumstances where you'd want the Banechant over that heal Vicious, but the fact that they are dwindlingly small, and this is a new unit, right? I just look at it and I'm like, do they have Banechant because they had it last edition? So, I don't know. It got that redesign, and it's just a little confusing there. I don't quite get why it has it. Anyway, that's it for the battle report. I hope you guys liked it, and until next time, bye.